Good morning. It's 8:30 and I'm going to call the Clay County Board of Commissioners meeting for November 19th, 2024 to order. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
I'll offer a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Next, we have citizens be heard. Are there any citizens present who wish to address the commission on any item that's not on today's agenda? Steve, we got anybody?
I do not have anyone, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Next, we have approval of payment of bills and vouchers.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. And next, we have approval of minutes from November 5th, 2024.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any additions or discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, moving on. We have our audit report for 2023. And remote, we have Karen Stacken, Minnesota State Audit Director. And Steve, are you going to? Okay.
Mr. Chair, she'll just take it from the top.
Okay, Karen, you hear us?
Good morning.
Good morning. Go ahead and proceed.
So my name is Karen Stacken. I'm with the Minnesota Office of the State Auditor, and I'm here to present the results of your 2023 audit. So first, I want to make sure to thank management and staff of Clay County for their cooperation and assistance during our audit. We did audit Clay County for the year ended December 31st, 2023, and we've issued our opinion on the county's financial statements and also issued a management and compliance report, and that's the report that you should have received a copy of. We performed our audit in accordance with auditing standards that are generally accepted in the United States of America, the governmental auditing standards, and also the uniform guidance. And that uniform guidance are the federal requirements that are related to the federal award programs. So our opinion on the financial statements was dated December 20th, 2024. It's included in the county's annual financial report. And it's an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion. It's the best one that you can get. This means that the financial statements are fairly presented and conform with applicable accounting standards. We also audited the county's major federal awards and have issued an opinion on compliance for the federal programs that we audited. We audited the COVID-19 coronavirus state and local fiscal recoveries funds, which received an unmodified opinion. We also audited the Medicaid cluster, and that one did receive a qualified opinion. A qualified opinion means the county has complied in all material respects with the compliance requirements that were direct and material to the financial statements, except for, in this case, it was the eligibility compliance requirement had one finding, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Throughout our audit, any findings related to internal control, compliance, Minnesota legal compliance, federal program internal control over compliance, or federal program compliance were discussed with management and staff. And then at the end of the audit, we discussed those written findings, which are the ones that are included in the management and compliance report that you received in detail with members of both management and governance. Our management and compliance report includes a corrective action plan and a summary schedule of prior audit findings. Both are provided by management of Clay County. The corrective action plan is just management's plan for resolving the current year issues. And we do not audit that information that's in that corrective action plan, but we will be following up on it next year and testing those items again to see if that plan was implemented. The summary schedule of prior audit findings lists all the findings that were reported in last year's management letter and provides us the status of each of those. And the status could either be fully corrected, partially corrected, or not corrected. So for the 2023 Management and Compliance Report, we did have 2 findings, and we're able to resolve 1 from the prior year. So in the schedule of findings and question costs, it's going to include information about each of the findings. It's going to have the criteria, which tells you what we measured the finding against. The condition is a description of the issue. The context will provide additional information or give you more perspective. The effect is what could happen or what it could lead to. The cause is why management believes that this existed. And then the recommendation is our suggestion for improvement. So if you do look at page 6 of that Management and Compliance Report, the bottom of that page, it does have the first finding, which was related to segregation of duties. So for this one, just because of the size of a couple of the county's departments, the county doesn't have proper segregation of duties. And it can have like one person that would be responsible for potentially doing the billing, the collecting, the recording, depositing, as well as in some cases it could be the bank reconciliation. In an ideal situation, we'd like to have those duties segregated. The effect would be that you could, an employee just doing their normal job may not find a misstatement in a timely manner. And our recommendation for the future would just be that management and board be aware of the lack of segregation of duties and try to implement oversight procedures where possible. And then the second finding is right below that. It's starts on the middle of page 7, and it's related to eligibility. And this is related to the Medicaid cluster. And for the condition there, we noted that this is specifically related to eligibility that's determined through the Maxis program. And when we do the testing, we compare the information in the case file to what's been entered into Maxis just to make sure that the information matches. And we found a few items that didn't, and those are listed in the finding. What could potentially happen is that if the information if the lack of updated information in Maxis to document the verification of the key eligibility determining factors increases the risk that somebody could receive benefits when they're not eligible. And our recommendation would be to implement additional procedures to provide reasonable assurance that all documentation is obtained and properly updated into Maxis. So those were the 2 findings that we had for this year. There was one finding from the previous year that was resolved, and that was actually related to the State and Local Fiscal Recoveries Fund program, and it was a finding in the past that was related to suspension and debarment. So that one was resolved. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions? No, it appears not.
All right, well, thank you for your time today, and we look forward to working with you again in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Thanks.
Before we move on, any comments or discussion on this issue? Okay. Next up, we have request approval of changes to benefit elections for elected officials. And Darren Brooks, currently our current HR director.
Acting HR director. All right. Thank you. I'm not usually used to being early in the agenda here, so I have to get geared up. So last month, as you recall, the board authorized Human Resources to add $4.88 a month to the non-grandfathered single county contribution for the year of 2025. And also at that same meeting, the board authorized dual married couples who both work for Clay County to opt for just one family plan instead of having to carry 2 family single plans. And at that same last insurance subcommittee, We also discussed the possibility of researching and allowing the elected officials the option to opt out of the county health insurance. And that this is if they have some other insurance as well. Through talking with our benefits consultant at NIS, and it was determined that the option to opt out of the county health insurance was possible if done as a whole group, and that whole group would be all the elected officials within Clay County. This is an option only. If an elected official wants to keep the county insurance and receive the county contribution, that's perfectly fine. Nobody will be forced out of the county coverage, and that would certainly be allowed. The personnel policy also already allows county commissioners to opt out of that coverage. And what we would do is we would have to change the personnel policy to include all elected officials, because the policy right now only says county commissioners. That change would allow the elected officials to continue to be paid the county contribution to pay for their own insurance or their other insurance. Those that elect to opt out would have to prove that they have other coverage before they would be given the county contribution. And the county contribution at that point, if the decision is to opt out, would be taxed at the normal rate. Elected officials still can purchase all other forms of ancillary benefits from Clay County if they would like to. So if they want to keep their dental insurance or whatever, we're just dealing with health insurance right now. The only one that we have the commissioners and elected officials still in the contract would be the single life insurance. So you would have to continue to pay that, which I think is $2.88 a month or something like that.
And single dental.
That's single life.
Isn't single dental required too, by everybody?
You could opt out of that if you wanted to.
Okay, because that's separate than the health.
Yes, we're just talking health right now.
Okay.
Yes. And finally, this would be no cost to the county, since all the commissioners and all the elected officials already get a county contribution. They would continue to get the same county contribution as well. For new elected officials, if they want to have a family plan and get the family county contribution, they would have to have the county health benefits. But if they wanted to go out on their own and have the option to opt out of our county health benefits, they would get the single non-grandfathered county contribution as well. So with that being said, I'm open for questions.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
You know, as
Commissioner
we talked about at our other meeting, there's several other differences between elected people than the people that we have who are full-time that receive benefits. And I talked about those before. Elected people are not really considered full-time permanent positions like most of everybody else when we hire them. They get on as full-time employees. We get a reduced amount put into para than all other employees. We don't bank sick time like all the other employees that they can then use to help to cover some of their medical costs down the road. And I think, as having been on the insurance committee for a long time, one of the ways we're always looking at, and that's just what exactly you talked about, where we allowed that change and the multiple people working for the county and having one policy. There's some things there that are the right thing to do, and then we also have to, in all good faith, we need to be watching out how we can, how our claims might be, premiums to claims, and if you take a look at the 87 counties and the number of commissioners that might be higher up in age, it's no secret that there might be more medical costs involved with that. But that shouldn't be part of our decision here. But but it still is it's a factor in trying to reduce future premium increases for everybody. That's the goal behind this. And again, I think an important factor too, and if somebody might say, well, boy, if we don't do this, we're gonna be able to buy that, and then we're gonna pocket a lot of cash, so to speak. One of the issues there, and you brought it up, is that all newly elected people, whether it's the commissioners, whether it's the county attorney, or whether it's the sheriff, all newly elected people would fall under the non-conforming use for health purposes for the cafeteria plan, which means they, if they're a family, they get family coverage, and if they're single, they get a single cafeteria plan contribution. If a newly elected person decides that they want to go opt out, they are going to get the single cafeteria contribution, not the family one.
Correct.
So,
And it'll be taxed.
and
it'll be taxed.
and the difference will be taxed, yes.
Correct.
So I support this. I think it's, and again, I do this as, from the standpoint that I look at the potential of also how it can reduce future premium increases. So,
Commissioner Krabanoff.
I can't articulate as well as you just did, Kevin, but anyway, I've been part of these subgroup committees also, or the insurance committee, right along with Kevin for the last year or so, and this has come up a couple of times. We finally brought it toward this. I'm in full support of it. I don't see any part of it that is negative to the county. I think it gives flexibility for especially electeds that don't know how long they're going to be here. Some security, the fact that perhaps they may want to be keeping some of the health programs that are already come in with. And this forces some of those elected people to pay for 2 insurance premiums also. So that's the only thing I would add, but again, strongly in support. And I don't know at what point we ask for a motion so that we can discuss it, but I would do that at this point. So I'll make a motion to allow elected officials the option to opt out of the Clay County insurance benefits and to purchase their own health insurance while continuing to receive the county contribution.
second.
Have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you. I stated some concerns that I had with this during our work session, so I'll be voting against this today.
Any other discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, the motion passes.
Thank you.
Next up, request approval of change order number 7 for withdrawal management detox facility.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, before you this morning is change order number 7. This change order came about due to a city fire marshal inspection. The request is to provide additional funds let's see, am I in the right one? Here we are, of $8,209.90 for fire alarm modifications that were brought forward, making sure that we have additional strobe notifications in our ADA rooms within the facility. With that, I'd yield for any questions.
Questions for Steve? We have no questions. I'll entertain a motion.
Well, Mr. Chair, I would just say that all of these things have gone through the committee too, and that all of these are recommended for approval, so I would move to approve change order number 7.
I'll second the motion.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you. There was a story on the news last night about this, and it kind of left a cliffhanger that it seemed like the opening was going to be considerably delayed. And I just want to assure the public that we really aren't that far out from getting open. I talked to Gertz this weekend on the project, and there's just minimal components that we're waiting on to get folks transferred over there to start serving them there. Obviously, we're still serving the public at the Detox facility across the road, but I just want to state and maybe clarify that that delay is not as substantial as it was maybe alluded to in a news story last night.
Commissioner Campbell?
Yeah, I agree with those comments. I do think that we should, Steve, if we could be constantly updated too, you know, it's one thing for the incidentals that might need to go on through the contractor and those items. It's another issue on the permitting process and waiting for St. Paul. You know, so hopefully that doesn't just draw this thing out for weeks and months at a time. As I mentioned before, a long time ago, we approved hiring an awful lot of additional staff with the idea in mind that we're going to be open in October. And here we are, no, so we have all these people hired and the facility isn't actively in place. So, you know, so there is there's a cost to us by not taking full advantage of this facility, and it's certainly not at the fault of us. So if we can just be updated and
We'll do that.
I don't know what strings we can pull or people we can call in St. Paul that can help maybe expedite this, because it's costly to us for every day that those doors are locked. So.
Any further conversation? Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, we have a motion. I think we're ready for the vote.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We've got a public hearing at 9, but we have time, Steve, if you want to.
All right, I have several in a
Agenda
row,
item 6.
several in a row here. I could move forward. The next item then would be agenda number 6, a change order in regards to the DMV project in a total dollar amount of $1,086.42. If you take a look at the second page, we had several credits, accent band material substitution allowance, deduct, which we had an allowance set aside that we didn't spend, and then window sill substitution. These three together are about $5,000. We had several additional costs, a kiosk countertop addition. They made a decision to move to iPads in our kiosk area, and so that required an adjustment. And then we had a exterior canopy lighting, and then also we were about 9 baffles short when they got everything up in the ceiling for that cloud effect, and so that was an additional $830. Total a net of $1,086.42. Again, just note the board's already taken action, but we wanted to make sure that it was addressed within a change order as the lobby and staff chairs of $12,709.38, leaving a remaining contingency of $164,176.69. I'd yield for any questions.
I'll offer a motion to approve change order number 5.
I'll second that, and if I can, Mr., I would offer the same deal where our committee did agree with all of these change orders and recommend that this be approved.
Any further? Yes, Frank.
I have a question on the baffles. Why did they need additional baffles? Why wasn't that figured in? I mean, that should have been part of the original bid, shouldn't it?
My understanding, it was part of the original bid, but when they got the baffles up and they were spaced the way that it was set up through the I guess the process, we were 9 of them short in order to complete the whole process. So.
I mean, I realize it's a minor deal, but I just feel it was up to the bid. You could have that done. I mean, if they were short, they supplied them, but evidently not.
Any other comments or questions? Not, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Steve, you want to go for a trifecta?
Mr. Chair, I have the next two, but I was wondering if, just from a timing standpoint, we have members from the chamber that are here. Could we slide number up to number 9? And that way, they wouldn't have to stay through our public hearing.
Absolutely. Ladies?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last Tuesday, I think that we had a work session, and as we're preparing for our budgets, several agencies that we provide funding for are also preparing for their budgets. As part of our preliminary levy, we were asked by the Greater Fargo-Moorhead Economic Development and the Fargo-Moorhead West Fargo Chamber for a combined request this year totaling $250,000 for the new Innovate 28 program. Through our budgeting preliminary budget discussion, we made the determination that we would provide the same funding that we did in 2024 of $100,000 for the chamber, $85,000 for the EDC. Through some discussions with members of the EDC and the chamber, they felt that it would be beneficial for the county to consider a combined gift or allotment of $185,000. And so we had some discussion last week. Heard from Shannon Full on the position of the two agencies and are here before you this morning looking for your guidance and direction so they're able to best plan for their budget for 2025. That I'd yield for any questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Campbell.
Mr. Chair, and again, I guess I support what they're trying to do jointly on this, but I just from a technical standpoint, we can't make a motion to fund Innovate 28 because that isn't an entity.
Sure.
So there has to be some fiscal host this money would go to, and I'm assuming that's the chamber? What's the EDC? Okay. So, so I guess then, Steve, from my standpoint, what motion we'd have to make would be to fund through EDC the Innovate 28 program. And then the check would have to go through that, and that, and I think that's important to understand, and I think it's also important to understand that this isn't an ongoing, this is a 1 year at a time deal because we can't be committing to future years on this, but I think if we have to give the motion based on an entity, and so I don't know if there's people that think different than that, but I'm assuming that that's what we'd have to do.
Further discussion. Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you. I had the opportunity to talk with Shannon last night, and I appreciate that she has staff here, but just really wanted to reiterate from her how much she appreciates the collaboration and the leadership that we've had together on these projects, and she really feels that moving forward holistically is really in the best interest of both entities. My only caution, if you will, is as we move into subsequent years in budgeting, I don't want it to look like there's a significant decrease for the chamber
Right.
and an increase in one, because then that's where we get questioned, well, you had a 40% decrease to the chamber and now all of a sudden you're asking for a 40% increase when really it would be, they would offset each other. And I know we do that with different grants and we just really have to, it's more an educational piece, but I work more with the chamber, with my portfolios than the EDC. I know those of you work with the EDC more, but just our money is so well spent working with this entity. The presence, the lobbying, the advocacy, the meetings that they're willing to host and pull together for us. I've talked to staff from the chamber 4 out of the last 7 days on serious and important issues for Clay County, so they continue to represent us so well. So I will really lean into what their advice on this component is, but I'm a fierce advocate for the work that they do.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Campbell.
Well, at this point, I guess I would like to make a motion that, that we authorize $185,000 through the EDC as a recommendation by both the Chamber and EDC to fund the new Innovate 28 program for 2025.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I want to echo Commissioner Mojo's observations. The chamber has been indispensable to us in a lot of ways, along with Downtown Moorhead Inc. and other entities. They've really addressed a lot of the issues that impact our community and this side of the river. I know there's been some concerns, and EDC is in my portfolio. This in no way reflects a decision on this commission's part to not fund the chamber and to transfer these funds to EDC. I'd like that to be on record. The chamber has, through their actions and their support and their activities in many, many factors on this side of the river, has supported our community, and we don't want this to detract from that. So for this year, I'm comfortable in the motion as it's worded, that this is simply a clerical shift to the priorities that both the chamber and EDC have. Any further? Frank?
I got a question on the amount. Did we originally apply 185,000 and they just wanted 85,000 more?
No. No. So, Commissioner Gross, in last year, we had 100,000 went to the chamber and 85 went to EDC. And they're just asking that last year's number be combined and put in towards one entity to cover this new Innovate program that they're both requesting. So the dollar amount doesn't go up or down from last year.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Crabbe, did you have something?
I'm good.
Oh, okay.
And Mr. Chair, I agree with you, and that's kind of why I put in my motion that it's important to understand that 185 is at the request of both entities to do. And, I agree with what they both said about the chamber, going all the way back to their hard work and efforts in helping us even when we went through the sales tax deal for our new law enforcement center and correctional facility. They stood behind us strong on that, and they haven't stopped on issues that are important to Clay County. So I don't want this to appear that we're not funding the chamber by any means, so.
Is this going to affect our budget then?
No.
Levy?
It will not, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gross, this is the dollar amount that we have in our preliminary budget.
Okay.
Any further discussion? If not, we have motion and a second on the floor. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Mr. Chair,
I'm
could
sorry.
I just get clarification, who was the second? I have Commissioner Campbell as making the motion. I don't have
Commissioner
I'll second
Krabanoff.
Paul?
Commissioner Mo-
Commissioner Krabanoff.
Yeah, I
Commissioner
think-
Krabanoff.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. And thank you, ladies, for coming over here representing the chamber. Okay, next on the agenda, we have public hearing, Metro Flood Diversion Authority to acquire and obstruct road right-of-way and approval of Resolution 2433 to take over road right-of-way and authorizing the permanent obstruction thereof. Do we
Mr.
have a
Chair,
motion?
I move to open the hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of moving to a public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. We are in public hearing. Justin?
Yes.
Take it away.
Good morning. So the purpose of the public hearing is a request that was received from the Diversion Authority to acquire and obstruct road right-of-way on 170th Avenue South. So that's the area that will be crossed by SE4. So essentially what this public hearing is doing is just kind of notifying the landowners around and then also acknowledging that the county will take over that small stretch of road that will be permanently closed and obstructed by SE4.
Any questions or comments? Commissioner Campbell?
Maybe just a little brief history, seeing as we're in a public hearing too. And I think in this process, and this goes back in having several dialogues with Holy Cross Township and landowners there. And for the longest time, the Corps of Engineers had wanted to close both 150th and 170th. And the township was adamantly opposed to that. As a matter of fact, they wanted both of those to remain open. And the county stepped in on behalf of the township and tried to convince the Corps that we should keep those both open. The Corps did agree to keep 150th open, but they would not agree to 170th. That was their form of compromise, and I think they had several reasons based on alignment and those other factors in not doing that. And so, then there was, and I know Chris Backyard and Katie are here as well from the Diversion Authority. And part of what we're hoping for in this whole process is that Holy Cross Township would come to an agreement through an MOU with Diversion Authority. And it's my understanding now that that has been completed and that there is a mutual agreement in place, which is, I'm glad to hear, and both parties were able to work that out. And really what this amounts to, and this is the county's responsibility to do, we have all this legal jargon that's in our packet, and really what it boils down to is we're vacating a very short section of road. And that's really what it amounts to. So I think, while we're in this public hearing, I just want to say thanks to Chris and Katie and Jody and everybody else who worked in this regard along with Holy Cross Township to be able to work out this agreement. And I'm really glad to see that happen. Mm-hmm. That's my little history on it.
I was part of those discussions as well, and it was, it's gratifying to see that although not everybody got everything they wanted, the Corps yielded on 150th, and that kept that road open. And I'm glad there's been a compromise on 170th, and we can move ahead with the project. Any other questions, observations? Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to echo, I just really appreciate the flexibility and the willingness to come to the table from Holy Cross Township. It's, there are winners and losers in some of these components of the projects, and it's taken a long time to get to this position, and I know there's been a lot of hard conversations. I really do feel like this is a good compromise, particularly to get it finished in Southern Clay County, so thank you.
Any landowners here? I don't see any, but.
Any further from the county side or the diversion? We've covered it. Any comments or observations from the board?
Move to close the hearing.
Okay, all in favor of closing the hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Mr. Chair, I would move the resolution 2024-33 to take over right-of-way and authorize permanent obstruction thereof.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further? Oh, yeah. Any further discussion? If not, we'll have a roll call.
Commissioner Mojo?
Yes.
Commissioner Campbell?
Yes.
Commissioner Ebinger?
Yes.
Commissioner Gross?
Yes.
Commissioner Kravinoff?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for the hard work.
Thank you.
Steve, I guess we can jump ahead to Agenda 8 before the break. We're running well ahead of time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. As you recall, this last year, the board felt that it was important not only to work closely with our AMC committee members and policy groups, but also to identify specific issues that are important to Clay County. And this past Tuesday, this board met in work session to talk about the possibilities of what those legislative priorities could be for the 2025 session. We had different discussions, heard different presentations, and through our discussions, three areas came forward as they did last year. The first area was flood mitigation, flood diversion funding. We also had 911 emergency response funds. And the third item was mental health acuity of the psychiatric residential treatment facility and in replacing our current non-SCARE facility with the PRTF and looking for funding for a non-SCARE detention. And so with that, I would open it up for some discussion from this commission.
Discussion. Commissioner Campbell.
Chair, these are all equally important in their own way, obviously, and I think that each of them, our approach to the funding on each of them is likely to be different. And again, we have our two board members here who act as our working representatives with legislative issues in St. Paul, with Commissioner Mojo and Commissioner Krabenoff, and as obviously number 3 is, and I guess what I'm trying to say is, I don't think these are listed in a ranking order, so to speak. It's because they're all equally important and they all have to be funded through their own sources through St. Paul. One may be bonding, obviously the flood diversion stuff, the likely and only option for that would be through bonding, whereas with our mental health, that one is hopefully through the governor's budget or through Health and Human Services. And 911 could be through public safety dollars. So they're all different in themselves. And I just don't want it, the way we have it listed here, that there's a priority sequence to them, that they're all equally important for us. That's my comment.
I think we've seen energy from some of our legislators and certainly from members of this commission that don't indicate that this is a list of priorities. I think all three of them are important, as Commissioner Campbell pointed out. Really, they're coming from different resources, different variations of state funding, and we need to focus on all three. Any further comments?
I'm kind of repeating, but again, it's about timing. And when our legislators and when that priority gets the highest level, whether it's us toward them or whoever we're reaching out to, that's, again, then that's the timing of that priority. But, yeah, so it's not weighted in any one way. We do know up in forefront at this moment, the PRTF is being talked about a lot, and that development will still take shape over the next month. And once if I look at diversion funding, that'll most likely be after the session opens, and if they have bonding or whatever to be advocating, and the 911, Representative Joy is speaking toward that continually, so let them do their work.
Yeah, 911 is definitely a work in progress. Right now, there's been a huge internal shift in supervision of the various components within the Department of Public Safety, and we're still, I think the priority this year is to get a mediator hired and get the 911 legislation updated. And I don't know if we're going to be able to identify the 911 funding and get it to the PSAPs, but that's ultimately our goal. So I don't know how much focus there's going to be on getting any 911 funds paid out to the various PSAPs within our state. There's so much basic work to get our legislation straightened out that I think is going to be the priority. The flood diversion obviously is important, and our PSAP, the PSAP that we're working on has got huge support from across the state, or across this part of the state, and has taken a lot of energy from Commissioner Mojo, Commissioner Kravinoff, and our local legislators. So that's got a life of its own and funding sources that go beyond just bonding. So that's an exciting opportunity for us, and I think obviously we need to state it as a priority. Any further comments? Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the long conversation that we've all had regarding our legislative priorities. I really appreciate the discussion we had at the work session. But even more encouraging is the amount of partners that we have in all three of our legislative priorities, anywhere from our local partners to different counties to our statewide partners and then representatives in St. Paul. I'm really excited that Clay County has taken such a bold step in prioritizing these and making sure we're having discussions, not just in legislative session. That really helps us to further the cause and the resources. You know, at some point, we'll have to figure out on a calendar really when whoever will be in St. Paul, because we've heard from those that are sponsoring the bills that we need to have a weekly presence down there. So I think that's a discussion more about calendar alignment, but really hopeful that we can continue to elevate the needs that we're seeing. And I just want to say for the public, it's exciting to be in statewide meetings and hear from so many different people that are problem solving statewide. Wow, Clay County is really proactive in taking on these issues, bringing awareness to issues, being such active problem solvers, and it is really exciting too. These are not issues that we're really excited to say that we have to deal with, but it's something that we're going to deal with. I think Commissioner Gross said last week, if it's something that needs to be done, why aren't we doing it? It needs to be done. So I'm excited about the conversations that are going to come in the legislative session, and hopeful that we are able to raise, maybe get some dollars this way, or some language in bills to represent these changes. I do want to say to the public too that this is not the only items that we will be advocating for at the state. Often projects come forward to us that they're asked for resolutions of support, and certainly we have the platforms through the Association of Minnesota Counties, and so we will continue to elevate all of those issues as we need.
Further comments? I do want to point out, I attended the first meeting of the Restorative Justice Program, the grant we're seeking through the state last week, and the comments, the observations made by people within our community and outside of the community about the focus we have on juvenile health, this attempt to get a PRTF put together for juveniles, and West Central's role in providing really good services to people in this part of the community. We've got a reputation that's well earned, but that doesn't come easily. It takes a lot of work on the part of our staff, on the part of our legislative bodies, including this commission. And I think we really need to give a nod to the energy that Commissioner Mojo, Commissioner Kravinoff have put in, and Steve and our staff have put in on the issue of the mental health. Any further comments? We got a motion.
Is there specific language? Or-
No, I don't believe we have a motion. We just had discussion.
Well, I'll make, without seeing any, I don't see the guidelines, but anyway, I'll make a motion.
Bottom. Motion be adopted by county board.
Is that a motion? Did
Go
you?
ahead, why don't you make it?
Oh, I thought you already did. I was just going
Oh,
second.
no, I don't see the paperwork for it,
Oh.
but anyway, that's all right,
You need it? Right there.
thank you.
All right, I'd move to approve flood diversion funding, mental health acuity, psychiatric residential treatment funding facility, and the 911 emergency funds as Clay County Board of Commissioners 2025 legislative priorities.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Now we'll move to a vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay, and right now we take a 10-minute break. I'm going to call the meeting back to order. And next on the agenda is going to be a request approval to hire a accounting technician for the auditor's office due to a resignation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you mentioned, sitting in for Ms. Johnson this morning. She's looking to replace a accounting technician due to the recent resignation. This position is included within her budget. In fact, the employee's been with our county for a number of years, and so we'll probably be looking at savings in the rehiring. With that, I'd yield for any questions.
Any questions for Steve?
Move to approve the request.
Second.
Okay, a motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay, we have a public hearing that we've got to wait 27 minutes for, so that'll give us time to do some of our committee reports. And we're going to start with Commissioner Kravinoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back to last Tuesday, in the afternoon, we had our commission work group meeting discussing the issues. I guess we've mentioned everyone today. Our priorities are our collaboration, our investment with the Innovate 28, and then also the medical insurance opt-out possibility. So, well discussed. That evening, I was at the Buffalo Red Watershed monthly meeting, and you get this time of year where before the rains came, you have a lot of field work going on. It's where drainage is reanalyzed by a lot of landowners. So it started out a little unusual, but it happens from time to time. We had, there were 3 citizens speaking, and it was about drainage and how it was affecting some of their ditches or kind of conflicts between neighbors. So anyway, they were addressed, and then there was one in Clay County and then 2 down in Woken, one in Becker and one in Woken. And anyway, long and short of it, there's no action taken. It's just that the board hears it, and then also staff speaks to it, and then they try to come to some resolution to help them move forward in their area of concern. Also, there was one drain tile permit. There too was 2 neighbors trying to block out someone from draining water and not being able to have drain tile put in. And anyway, the board did move to grant this gentleman his drain tile. That was also down in Woken. And then the last comment I'll make about the meeting, they have their Citizens Advisory Committee set up every year that those appointments will be made in January. So that's what I have to say about that. And then we had a week, Commissioner Rojo, myself, Steve, and others, our small group on the PRTF plan. We had a weekly meeting with Representative Keeler. Ongoing discussions on that, how we simply keep moving forward to advance the cause of funding. The next day was an event put together by the Family Resource Committee, or Center, excuse me, Family Resource Center, yeah, bringing forward their ideas, updating the plan. And so in doing so, it's kind of come to a point where the planning's pretty well in place, the ideas, and they wanted to get it out to stakeholders. I was very impressed with the numbers. So it was held at the MCOM Center, very good 2.5 hour meeting, a lot of input from other nonprofits, mainly from our schools, and what this resource center could be. And again, I'll just re-express, this is not about a physical location. It's about, at this point, a hub, a navigator of all the resources that can help with accessibility and the knowing of the programs that are created in Clay County, not Clay County entity, but in the county of Clay County, that all these nonprofits and people are involved with. And anyway, so they gave a presentation on that. That was mainly done by Megan Jensen, who's Creative Communities Consulting, Quinn, speaking for the Clay County Social Services. They are the fiscal host for this money comes through the state to go out toward these programs. And then also CAP-LP, who's been identified, if everything moves forward, they would be the navigator of the whole thing. And so those three spoke. Didn't know how many to expect. Thought maybe there'd be around 20, 25, and just short of 60 people showed up. So it just shows the energy behind it. One more update on that is that there are grants that pay for all this work that's being done. And there was one initial grant, $80,000 from Sawyer Foundation, excuse me, and a grant. And so having done the work, the second phase of the Sawyer grant is called the implementation phase. And that funding was approved in the last couple of weeks. So they now have $86,000 to spend over 2 years on implementation. The other grant was a bigger one that's through the state DHS. And that one, there isn't an exact number to it, but it's up in the range of $680,000 over 3 years. And I think they're very close to having that approved. So again, when all these things happen, Steve will be aware of it, and maybe what we can do is get Quinn to come and give a presentation updates, and perhaps CAP-LP and Megan might join them just to give us a full picture of what that may look like and the funding behind it. And that was my meetings for the week.
Thank you. Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you. Last week, I also attended the work session group with all of you. I virtually attended the Buffalo Red Watershed District as reported on by Commissioner Krabenoff. Well, I worked on the PRTF task list that we had before that meeting on the with Representative Keeler on the Wednesday. I attended the FMDA Land Management Committee meeting. We basically dealt with recommendations for excess land that has been acquired, smaller remnants, the vast majority of which were recommended for approval. Actually, all of them were recommended for approval, sorry. Last week, I took several calls in regards to issues that are ongoing. I talked with Kurt Stubbstead, our representative on the Buffalo Red Watershed, about working with a couple landowners on some ditch concerns, clean out concerns, follow-up conversations with Cale Dunwoody on the benefactor hotel stay issue that was brought to our attention for homeless folks, and then also followed up with him on legislative conversations that were had in a meeting that was held here with our legislative representatives. Yesterday, I attended the fall township meetings that were held at the LEC. Grateful to the Sheriff's Department for allowing the use of that facility, such a great space for something like that. And due to the construction of the Dilworth Fire Hall, it sounds like we'll host them again in the spring. Great updates. Thank you to all the staff that were able to attend and provide highlights of the work that they're doing there. Just one item that kept coming to my attention is all of our staff were so open to receiving comments and questions from township officials, and all of them gave out their personal cell phone number, said if any issue comes up, call me directly, we'll deal with this, and it just really speaks to the spirit of collaboration between the townships and the county of, as well. So thank you for that opportunity. Yesterday, I also attended a tour with our PRTF subgroup of the Dakota Boys Ranch PRTF facility and school that exists in South Fargo. Grateful for the opportunity to discuss with the staff there on highlights and opportunities that facility has there, and how we can implement part of those components into our new vision for what we're discussing. And then after that, was able to attend part of the planning commission, or planning meeting for that PRTF with Solutions and the architect and county staff as well. And I believe that concludes my report.
Thank you. Commissioner Campbell?
Thank you. On November 12th, in the afternoon, after our work group that's been discussed, and I believe there's minutes that are going to be out on that, I did attend, along with Commissioner Krabnoff. We talked a little bit more about our intergovernmental committee and the planning of the retreat. And there's been, based on our most recent committee meeting, there was some changes to the lineup for the agenda for the 2025 January agenda. And prior to that, we had listed as one of the topics as the opioid issue, and the other was we were going to receive an update on Heartland Trails. With all the recent developments and where the Heartland Trails is on everybody's docket right now with MetroCog and everything, that we decided that would probably, we could delay that conversation and focus instead on some of the homeless issues that are before us now. So and also bringing in a conversation about our PRTF. And so just maybe a little advance warning for Commissioner Mojo and Commissioner Krabnoff, I think the two of you and myself and Steve are going to probably be asked to be on a panel to talk about the PRTF. I think the two of you can handle the legislative part, and I'll be there to more talk about the design piece of it and using the current facility and how we're planning to do that. And Steve will kind of moderate that, I think. So that would be, you can probably anticipate that, and I think that has been moved to probably the late morning agenda item. And then Steve and I don't know if it's Sarah, if it's Jackie, whoever's is assisting with that afternoon. We do intend to have a panel which will include Quinn and I think a couple of others in regards to some of the homeless issues. There will be an agenda on that as well. Then on November 13th, I attended the Land Management Committee meeting, and that one, we actually recommended, at this point in time, several parcels of excess lands to go up for sale. And in this particular case, we're actually looking at having revenues come in for excess lands of about $2.5 million. So it's lands that had been purchased before that now we know, with where we are in the project, we know they're not going to be needed. So we're going to sell those back to the public. At least that's the recommendation. That's going to go before the Diversion Authority to make that decision this week. On Thursday, Thursday morning, I did attend the dispatch board meeting. I'm going to defer to our board chair. He also chairs that to give the update on that one. And, there was some exciting news on some savings. I think about to the tune of about $700,000 in savings. I'll let Commissioner Ebringer fill in the details there in his report. And then I did attend the Lakes Country Service Cooperative Board of Directors meeting that day as well. There's an election coming up for officers for that board, and then I was pleased to find out that one of our Moorhead School Board members has put his name in the hat to be elected to that, and that's Scott Steffes. And so it's and it sounds like there's 4 openings, and I think there's 4 applicants. So there's a high likelihood that we'll have 2 people from Clay County that'll serve on Lakes Country Service Cooperative Board. And they did talk about they do have a regional school crisis volunteer network that's very interesting and can be very helpful for if there's ever a crisis situation in any school. They all have numbers to know who they can call, and there's an instant rapid response or team that's put together through Lakes Country that can go anywhere within our county membership to help in handling a crisis situation. So that's really nice to know that's available, and all school districts are aware of that. On the and then on the 18th, yesterday, we had our Commissioner Mojo talked about the tour of the Dakota Boys and Girls PRTF in Fargo. That was a nice tour to be on. I was kind of focused on the living quarters that are there, in addition to the education. That's a little bit different over there because they also open up the education to folks that are outside of the PRTF. You know, in our particular plan, we'll have an education system within that building just for the PRTF people that are there, kids that are there. And then we came back here and we had some extensive discussions regarding the design. We focused an awful lot on the non-secure building. Through the process, we did receive a preliminary design, and after having several discussions, we noticed in there that there were only 2 classrooms designed in there, and after discussing it further, we felt that it would be more appropriate to have 3 for the number of kids that would be there. And so we were able to, through just altering some stuff, we were able to fit those 3 classrooms within the same footprint that's currently under design. We also talked about doing some internal modifications to I'm going to call it a restricted pod. I don't know, Steve, maybe you can help me out, but it's one where we have one pod that's going to be designed to be more hardened.
Correct, yeah. The exterior, the doors will be locked in that
Yeah.
area. Yeah.
Yeah, so because obviously there's a portion of those kids that are a little bit more troubled, so in that regard. But what we were able to do in making a few adjustments to that is it will allow us through Quinn's budget to be able to be reimbursed by the state for up to $250,000 a year in additional funding that we currently, our non-secure unit does not qualify for. So when you think about that slight adjustment to our plan will bring in that extra revenue that will really help in the funding of that. Yeah, I think, and then we did get a preliminary look at how that proposed structure would fit on our campus, so that we got a first look at that. and there will be more to come on that. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Commissioner Gross.
Last Tuesday, I also attended the work session we had, it's been reported on. Thursday, I had the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon. I think at this time of the year, most of the veterans programs, most of them are discussing Christmas programs they're gonna have. But there's one thing with the Moore State University, they have a representative there on their staff, and this Thursday, he's gonna have at 5 to 6 o'clock at Berry Auditorium, he's gonna have a coffee and talk session for anybody. I think they got 1,709 veterans going to the school at Moore State, so he's got quite a bit of people that could get involved with stuff that he's got going on there. Other than that, there's also the Moore American Legion's gonna have a Christmas program December 8th for children, grandchildren, if you're interested in that. There's also another group going to, I don't know where they're gonna be sent to, whether it's Ukraine or where anybody, veterans that are getting ready to go across seas somewhere. And then yesterday afternoon, we had the Township Officers meeting, which was, I just appreciate the people that came from our staff to talk about that, give information. I think those township officers are interested in what's going on, and the more we can help them out, I feel it's good to pass on that information. That's our only opportunity we have. Well, we don't, I mean, I guess we can email them all, but I think it's really a good contact we have with our township officers, and I really appreciate that meeting. Those are the three I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Last Tuesday on the 12th, following our commission meeting, I met with Steve Quinn Yeager and Commissioner Krabanoff, and we had a meeting reference some of the Churches United issues that are coming up and some options that the county has always had for getting some state funding directed to them. After that, Steve and I met with Kathy McKay, just having a discussion on the P4H community and Commissioner Gross, discussing the P4H Community Health Board meeting that we've got this coming Friday. And then I attended the board work session, which was addressed by other commissioners this morning, or the issues that we covered were addressed this morning by the commission. And following that, I had the final, and I'm happy to say final, meeting of Safe and Secure Courts grant reviews. And we have successfully spent the $500,000 the legislature designated to harden courtrooms in courthouses across the state. We issued 24 grants, and we spent the grant money down to the last nickel. And everybody who submitted a grant request, although many of them didn't get their entire request, everybody had some of their needs met. It was a very good process. On Wednesday, the 13th, we had our first Restorative Practices Advisory Committee meeting. Really impressed with the people in the community that are part of this process. Our county attorney, Mr. Melton, was there. We had a great starting meeting on this, and going after, is it a $500,000 grant?
Yes, Mr. Chair, 500,000 will be the maximum.
Maximum. Well, with the response we got and what the commissioner who's over this saw, he was there remotely, I think he was pretty impressed with the engagement that your staff in this community and the schools and everybody else are part of this. It was really gratifying to see the turnout we had.
I think he pointed out he was working from home, and he said that he had to call his wife in to take a look and see the amount of people that had shown up there, and just wanted to point out to his wife that he was just so impressed with the amount of people that had shown up, so it was a great turnout.
Yeah, just having completed a state grant process, That matters when you have community commitment like we've got here. And as I indicated earlier, the reputation this county has for addressing the needs of our juveniles, I think that can do nothing but add to the credibility of our request for grant funding. So I'm excited to look forward to see where we're going to go with that. On Thursday, I attended the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon meeting with Commissioner Gross, and he covered that. And later that day, I attended the Red River Regional Dispatch Center Board of Authority meeting, and we did have some good news. As everybody knows, we're building a new dispatch center, and one of the critical costs in that is always the technology. And in our technology budget, it's broken down into two categories that we got to report on. One is the consoles, and that is not just the furniture, that's the equipment that goes in to each workstation of the dispatchers and the call takers. And we had budgeted $1.99 million for that. In the final version, it looks like we say we came in about $379,702 under our budget. We're upgrading the Lumen call handling system that we're getting. The one that we have is not going to be worth transporting and reinstalling in the new center, and it can't handle the load that we're anticipating. So the upgrade, we had $509,000 in the budget. We came in $380,000 under. And Brian Zasterpil and the staff of the dispatch center, I'm going to give them all the credit. They have really done a good job on this, and it's good news to see something coming in under budget instead of over on all these projects that we're involved in. So that was the good news Commissioner Campbell spoke of. Yesterday, I attended the township officer meeting, and we've got a public hearing coming up, so I'll keep it short, but it is just gratifying, the staff we've got and the credibility they have. The township system, and I wasn't aware how critical it is to the county. All the years I worked for the city, we never really dealt with townships, but they are the boots on the ground in government. And they need to communicate with us, and we need to communicate with them. These meetings are great, but to see the sheriff, Justin, just everybody on our staff, you cannot underestimate. And I'm leaving people out. I'm trying to think. I'm looking at my notes. Oh, Matt, who's here. I mean, they trust our people work with them, they make themselves available. It's a very good place. Makes our job easy as commissioners. We look real good because you guys work so hard. So I appreciate that. And that completes my report. And,
I just have one addition to my report. On the meeting yesterday, Lauren Engelbertson gave a good contribute to the flag again. He always gives good talks on that, and he did another great job again yesterday. So thank you, Lauren.
And Steve, do we want to squeeze you in here?
If, I think it'd probably be all right. My report's not too long. Much of it is similar to the meetings you guys have attended. I'll just touch on maybe the ones that I didn't, was on my own. I met on the 12th, had a conversation with Dara Lee in regards to shared issues with the HRA. On the 13th, we had Clay County Management. We talked about elections, legislative priorities. Heard an update from HR. On the 14th, participated in the MCC's JPA pre-meeting. We talked about property acquisitions, litigation updates, relocation reimbursement, solar garden release agreement, and 2025 farm leases that will be on the agenda this coming Thursday. On the 14th and 15th, I participated in the AMC Futures. We had an election debrief. We heard from the Commissioner Tarek Tomes and Chief Security Officer John Israel from Minnesota IT or Minute. I think one of the things that it was important to talk about in our one of the things that we talked a lot about with them is the importance of updating Maxis, the social service platform that all social service uses. As we heard through our audit process from the state, many of our errors the errors that we've seen on our audit are often attributed to in that program. I'm not suggesting that they're all the systems problems, but that update certainly needs to happen, and so we were able to share that concern with them. We also heard from Rita Reynolds, CIO, on cybersecurity from NACO, and shared some different programs already with Rory that we heard about there. We also heard, had an update on from the AMC Citizen League group, making sure working getting done in keeping employees looking towards local government as a career, and then heard from Sarah Hennessy, Justice of the Minnesota Supreme Court. And just a note, next week we are scheduled to meet at 5 p.m. for our board meeting, and Truth and Taxation is at 6 p.m. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Brian, do you have anything? Jackie?
Just real quick, tomorrow's GIS day, so there'll be open house basically from 9 to 3. So come and stop by. There'll be some new online maps that will be displayed.
Okay. All right. Moving back to the agenda. Have a public hearing scheduled for a petition for rezoning. Do I have a motion?
Move to open.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor of moving in public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, we are in the petition for rezoning public hearing. Matthew, take it away.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. So this item before you today at this public hearing is a petition for rezoning of a parcel from agricultural general to highway commercial. The location of this parcel is just east of Hawley and on the south side of Highway 10. Address is 24297 Highway 10, Hawley, Minnesota 56549. This is the property. The base district, again, is agricultural general. The request by the applicant is a petition to rezone from agricultural general to highway commercial. A bit of property history for you. As far as we know, this has always been a commercial property. The original structure was built in 1965, and there were additions in 1975 and 1999. So it was historically an electrical contractor shop and business, and my understanding is the gentleman who ran the electrical contractor shop lived in the house across the street, and he would go and walk over to this business. They did receive a CUP, so a conditional use permit, in 1999 to convert from one non-conforming use to a different non-conforming use. I will explain non-conforming use in just a moment here. And since then, it's been a floral business, and it's also been briefly was a craft store. The current business in this location is Car King Auto. They also have a location in Hawley, within the city of Hawley as well. So for nonconformities, so the definition of a nonconformity is a structure or use or a premise which was lawful before the passage of an amendment of a zoning ordinance or regulation, but is no longer in conformance with the existing zoning regulations. So this is often kind of, I think, interpreted as, oh, I have a property that's grandfathered in. It's grandfathered because it existed before the current zoning regulations. One of the kind of differences or the misinterpretations of grandfathering and non-conforming is if you're grandfathered, you think you might be able to continue your business or expand your business, or if your business is destroyed in any way by a fire or something like that, you can rebuild it and exactly or even bigger than how it was. And actually how it works is nonconformities are allowed to be continued, but they must not be expanded or intensified in any way. And so, and this is in state statute, and also in our ordinance. With this business, they did receive that conditional use permit in 1999 to go from one non-conforming use to another, and despite the, I guess, the prohibition against expansion or intensification of a business, they did get a building permit to expand 1,500 square feet. of this business after 1999. So they would like to continue to rent the property as a retail or a commercial space. I know it's, that's the property owner leases this property. It's changed hands a few times, businesses a few times throughout the years. And currently allowing it to go from an ag general to a highway commercial might fit the history of the property a little bit better. Just going to go through some standards. Highway commercial standards, the minimum lot size is the required minimum lot area for permitted and conditional uses of the district. There are some yard requirements as well. Gotta have 100 feet abutting a public right-of-way. Have to have 50 feet front yard setback, 40 feet rear yard setback, and then in this case, a 24-foot side yard setback. The lot coverage regulations are you can't have more than 30% of the lot area occupied by buildings, and you also have to have access to a public right-of-way. Some additional property information. So this current business, there are aspects of it that are operating outside of the property boundary and in the right-of-way. So it's a pretty small property. It's only about a half acre. This front yard area here is actually primarily right-of-way, and it's township right-of-way, and a little bit of state right-of-way as well. Up to this hearing, we have not received any comments from Eglin Township or the City of Hawley. We have received a letter and have had some meetings with the Minnesota Department of Transportation just about the aspects of this business that are in the right-of-way. There was testimony from neighborhood residents at the Planning Commission public hearing. They were opposed to the rezoning, basically due to the appearance of the business. There's just a lot going on outside of the building that maybe hasn't been as prominent in the past. And then also the use of a residential street for test driving power sports vehicles. And I should note too that this neighborhood is primarily residential. So some considerations for this rezoning. The rezoning would bring the use of the property into compliance. Some aspects of the use would still may be required to additional permitting. The structure itself would remain non-conforming, and the reason why it would remain non-conforming is that it does not meet any of the highway commercial zoning setback standards, but it does meet all the other standards. And the rezoning is really only for this property. It's not for any right-of-way or anything like that, so the business must be located entirely within the property. Looking at the compatibility with other plans, this is the City of Hawley's kind of future land use plan as the city grows and expands, and the red is what they have for zoned and would plan to zone as commercial. This property right here, they do have it in their future land use map as being a commercial property. When considering this request, it's always important to look at it through the lens of our comprehensive and transportation plan goals and objectives. We do have a goal to encourage commercial and industrial development that is in harmony with the agricultural and rural character of Clay County. We have an objective to promote value-added agricultural, commercial, and industrial development in our agricultural service center zoning district and along transportation corridors and hubs. We also have an objective to avoid or mitigate against commercial and industrial development that increases the potential for land use conflicts with rural residential or agricultural uses. And so this is, I think, where a lot of the Planning Commission had some pretty good discussion in their hearing in October, just with the fact that this property does have a long history of being a commercial retail property. But it is kind of size limited. It's not a very large property. You could argue that the current commercial use of this property, which is auto and power sports sales, is probably not the right fit just due to the size of the parcel and proximity to residential properties. A lot of the concerns that the Planning Commission had were related to the impacts of this this use or this business on the nearby residential neighbors. We also do have parking standards in our code, and this is just something else to consider, that parking on this parcel is limited due to just the size. We do have a minimum area requirement for parking spaces, and depending on what type of business you would have at this location, parking requirements can kind of range from either 7 to 21 spaces. It's highly unlikely that you'd ever be able to fit 21 spaces on this lot. This is just kind of a parking plan scenario here where you have about 7 spaces, so that minimum there. The staff did make a recommendation to the Planning Commission to approve this, but to relocate the off-premise sign in the right-of-way and then move all other aspects of the business onto the property where the business is located. The Planning Commission did make a motion to recommend approval to the board, but did not include those 2 conditions to relocate some of those aspects of the business onto the property. And so, you can see from the time of that hearing, which was in mid-October, to just a few days ago, just looking at the property, you can see that there are several items on display. The sign is still there. These are all in the right-of-way. This would be looking south. You can see the more vehicles were added. These vehicles are all in the right-of-way as well. An additional sign, and then just on the south side of the structure and the south side of the property, just a lot of outdoor storage of vehicles. Not entirely sure if these are just being worked on, if they're for sale, or if they're just being stored. That's unclear at this point. You can see more of those here, and then just another shot of the front. Some potential next steps for you to consider. So the board would have, according to our code and state statute, have 60 days from the public hearing to make a rezoning determination. So 60 days, that would be January 18th, 2025. So the way that I see it is you have kind of 3 options. You could approve the rezoning. You could require the property owner and business to remedy these issues with the outdoor displays, signage, provide detailed site plan, a parking narrative of all the business activities occurring on the property, and then hold another public hearing no later than, I think, the next meeting before that January 18th date would be Tuesday, January 14th to make that determination, or you could just deny the rezoning. And any decision that if you choose to make a decision on the rezoning today, either approval or denial, it would require a super majority of the board to approve that, so you'd have to have 4 out of 5 voting in favor of whatever decision is made. Any questions for me at all?
Questions for Matt?
One question on the right-of-way. If there's equipment on the right-of-way, does the State Highway Department have a right to confiscate that material?
My understanding in talking from them is that they do have the right to confiscate that material. They have not taken that step yet.
Okay.
Go ahead.
One other thing I should note too is with a decision, if you decide at some point to approve this rezoning, this is a very commercially oriented zoning district. And so there are certain things that, that are just permitted by right in this zoning district. Retail and commercial businesses are permitted by right. it's kind of the top example. Auto sales would be permitted by right. But there are some things that do require planning commission oversight. One of those that would, I think, in my opinion, pertain to the business that is currently in this location is just the outdoor storage or outdoor, anything outside that would be accessory to the commercial use. So, you know, you look at the pictures of the vehicles and the things on display. That would be something that would be, if you choose to move forward with the rezoning either now or at a later date, would require a conditional use permit from the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission could put specific conditions to address concerns. There are some just general standards in our code. Some of the standards being that anything outdoors would have to be screened from adjacent residential properties. There is a area requirement, so it's 10% of the lot area or 10,000 feet, whichever is greater. And you cannot store anything in the setbacks as well. So considering just the size of this lot, there really, if they were to be in compliance, there's really not a lot of space for outdoor storage, just considering the setbacks and things like that. Any other questions for me at all?
Mr. Campbell.
Matt, you went over a little bit of the history of this property, and I'm a little bit interested. So this has had multiple different commercial uses.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
At some point in time, was there ever permission granted for that to be commercial use? You talked about non-conforming. So the type of business that was in place, that was probably prior to any new zoning that came out. Is that correct?
Correct. The commercial use of this property predates county zoning.
Okay. And so the county zoning that is in place now, as long as that business did not change in terms of its original purpose, and it stayed in existence, that would still stand.
Yes, if it continued to be an electrical contracting shop, it would still be able to continue as.
And once that electrical type of business stopped for 1 year, that non-conforming goes away.
Correct.
And then that they'd have to meet all the new standards.
Yes, that if it goes away for a year, great for a year, yes. As has happened in the past too, you can change a non-conforming use to a different non-conforming use. It just cannot be of greater intensity, and there can't be any expansion. So my understanding is that since the floral business was in this location and the craft business was in this location, there has been a year where there was not a business in this location, so it couldn't go from one non-conforming use to another.
And can you pull up for us again that there were, in staff's recommendation, there were 2 considerations that should have been dealt with, right? Do you want to speak to those?
Yeah, the first would be to relocate that off-premise sign that's in the right-of-way to the property, and then move all other aspects of the business onto the property where the business is located. And I think even going a step further with that is if you were to consider at a later date approving this, I would recommend whatever is outside to meet the standards of both the highway commercial zoning district and that outdoor storage of materials.
And so going to that component of what you just talked about, we have had other highway or zoning changes requested for highway commercial, right? That we've changed the zoning from ag to highway commercial.
That has happened in the past, yes.
And when we've done that, we've also put stipulations on there in terms of fencing and those types of things on those uses, correct?
For a rezoning, not necessarily, but for like a conditional use permit in the future, yes, you could do that.
So talk to us about it. If this were to be approved, would this then still require to go back to the Planning Commission?
If it were to remain this business, my opinion is yes, it would have to go back for a conditional use permit to address the outdoor storage aspects of the business.
Of which you would probably include these.
Correct.
Which then, though, is not outside of the recommendations that we deal with other businesses.
Correct.
That's right.
I mean, and that's, I was not, Commissioner Krabanoff sat in for me at this meeting, but I did attend virtually, and so I think that's been part of the conversation that the Planning Commission has tried to align most of the applications in the most fair, uniform way.
Yes, that's correct.
Part of, in reading this, were you done? So part of reading this, one of the things that troubles me is the fact that, or why it's hard for us not to maybe look at this as a commercial use, because that's how we're taxing it. Right, currently we're taxing it as a commercial use.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair and Commissioner Campbell, I did have talk with the assessor and get the assessment history of this property, and it has been assessed as a commercial use. Always been assessed that way.
But it's kind of hard for us to suggest that this should be something other than that when we've been taxing it at that.
Right.
And that's my personal opinion that I bring up there, but I do have some concerns about some of the issues that you've raised that I'm hopeful that depending on how this works out, could be still handled through a conditional use process. But I guess I'll forego, and I want to hear if maybe we have some.
And we have people here. Anybody wish to address this here that's,
With the applicant.
would you step up to the microphone and give us your name and address, please?
My name is Scott MANTHE. My wife and I own the property in question, and I've always wanted to own the properties. I've driven this route since I was a young guy in going to college, and from the time I was 18, I wanted to own this property. For whatever reason, I thought it was a neat property because it was a business right within the houses, and someday my idea was to own a house next in that development next to the business and have a business out of this location. I bought it, it was for sale by Carol and Buzz Argyle. They own the flower shop there, and they were the ones that were granted the conditional use permit, expanded and intensified the business activity there by over doubling the size of the business in 1999. And there was a conditional use permit granted, and they came and viewed a site plan, and the site plan actually was okayed, and there was a property pin within that cut off the corner of the business, and I noticed that, and so when it was looked at, when the plating was done by, Matt, can you help me out? Who did the plating?
It's Rob Roberts.
Yeah, Rob Roberts. He cut off the corner of the building when he did his right-of-way, and his right-of-way was 110 feet there. It should have been 66 feet, and so I applied to the county and paid all the fees to have the proper meetings and things like that. So I paid over $4,000 or $5,000. I think it was over $4,000 to correct the right-of-way to a 66-foot right-of-way, and then therefore having the proper line there. And I don't think your diagram shows it right on the south side there. It goes over to the west a little bit. But so there's, the other part is that I own the land in front of the houses to the west there. I thought I was told that I had the whole works in front of there, and apparently Matt had said that it's just the area right in front up to the Highway 10 right-of-way. And so it goes right up in that area there. There was just an easement granted years ago because the person, I have the Auditor's Lot 24 out in the bigger chunk of land, and the person owned it, deeded off certain parcels of land, and the houses were to the west were inclusive of those parcels, but he retained the ownership of the land underneath it so he could have access to the west there. And so I've got ownership of the land right next to the Highway 10 right-of-way. And when the auditor subdivision was done by Rob Roberts, he platted that the township have a right-of-way in front of the building there. I don't think that ever existed there. And I was on the town board with the folks from Eglin Township. I'm not on there any longer. From as near as we could tell, the roadway was never adopted. It was set up as a right-of-way, but I believe the township never formally adopted that right-of-way. And so it's dedicated, but I don't believe it's adopted. And it isn't a 66-foot right-of-way going to the west. It's only a 30-foot, which is not, per statute, I don't think you can have a 30-foot right-of-way for a township road. And so it's really gray what Rob Roberts platted there, because I don't believe that there was ever a retraction or a granting any right-of-way on the next to Highway 10 right-of-way. And so I own that land up there, and I believed, and I haven't had an attorney review, but that area in front there was dedicated to the township, but I believe I actually own that because the land was deeded away from the auditor's lot 24 and the residual retained.
Scott, can we talk really quick on that piece? Just, have we been able to research into what the dedication was?
Yeah, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Mojo,
I do want to hear what the rest of what he has to say.
we have researched that, and really, as far as what's recorded, we see it as a township right-of-way. Mr. MANTHE would have to consult with an attorney or a real estate professional to figure out if to truly determine
So
ownership.
you've worked with the
Recorder's office, yeah.
Okay.
So where I'm getting my information is Barb Delaney from the Abstract Company, Clay County Abstract. She's abstracted for 30 years. She said, you have ownership of that property in front of those houses. And she drew me a diagram, and I had that diagram. I don't know if you have that up at all.
Mr. Chair, we did receive a diagram, but it was essentially just a drawing. There's nothing in a deed at all that shows that. What we have shows that as right-of-way, this lawn area.
So there is area in front of the lawn, but what he's talking about is the area just to south of the land that I have adjacent to the Highway 10 right-of-way. So there's two right-of-ways here. One is the Highway 10 right-of-way, and the other is the township right-of-way. And so the area in the front lawn is township what they show as township right-of-way, according to the plat that Rob Roberts did. Thanks, Matt.
Yep. So this is our GIS parcel map. Note that the parcel lines are not going to exactly match with the underlying imagery, but it's just a representation. This is that highway, state highway right-of-way, and then this is the township right-of-way. We did find a deed and drew out the deed that basically, this is Mr. Manthe's lot over here, and it shows, we did find a deed that shows him owning essentially this area right here. But however, we are not attorneys or real estate professionals. We cannot make that determination. It would require an attorney to review these deeds to make that determination. As far as this rezoning request is concerned, really, we are only dealing with this lot right here. We're not here, I don't think, to adjudicate any sort of right-of-way ownership questions or discrepancies or disputes. The matter before us is the rezoning as it pertains to this lot.
And I guess the reason I'd asked is, you know, I've been on the planning commission the entire time I've been on this board, and Mr. Manthe's had other issues that have come forward, particularly the larger buildings. And I do know that frontage road ownership was brought up, and it jives with what he'd said. You know, I don't want to argue what the legality is of who claims what ownership on the other piece, but just for the record, I think it's important to state that the board did acknowledge, if you will, that frontage component.
So what my overall intent was with buying the building was to someday have a spot for me to do our crop insurance business. And my son, who's 21, just is coming into the business with us now. And so someday I wanted to be able to have that potentially for us to do the crop insurance business out of there and have Highway 10 frontage. We're not ready to do that yet at this time. We've been operating out of our shop office on our homestead site. And so in the meantime, we bought it in 2016 when it was a flower shop. I bought the business and the land, I bought the building and the land. The other gal that was working for the flower shop, Carol Argyle, she bought the flower shop business from Carol, the refrigeration, the inventory, the fridges, the displays, all the interior stuff. And she was renting from us for, I believe, a year and a half or so, and then she gave notice. So we looked for a different tenant. We had Golden Treasures, which is a craft retail space in there for about a year. And then it sat empty for over a year in looking for a tenant. And I had been renting to Levi Dallaire and Kristen Bierke in Hawley, and they were very successful at car sales business. They move a lot of inventory, and you took some pictures when he had just bought all his inventory. I looked yesterday because I was out building the building, and he was down to only about 3 cars on the lot in total. Now the stuff out front, he has had that out on display because it's a Highway 10 frontage, highway commercial type of business. You're trying to attract customers as they're driving by and catch their attention. And so I think it's very consistent with what a business would try to do based on having Highway 10 frontage. There's probably about, when I first checked in 2012 when we bought the property, the big property, Auditor's Lot 24, I seem to remember 12 to 13,000 daily traffic count by there. I think now I would guess it's probably closer to 16,000, I think I heard some comment of. And so to me, a retail business off of Highway 10, it's always been there to try and capture the visibility of Highway 10. That's the reason for the location. Like they say, location, location, location. And so that's what he's trying to capture. Now, I wasn't invited to the meeting with the DOT Highway 10 people, so I don't know what was said at that meeting, but it's been tried to keep to a minimum as far as what activity is outside the township right away there, the grass area up front. I think at one time when they were mowing the grass, they moved some stuff forward in front of the road to get to the houses, and then they moved it back. And but I haven't heard what the outcome of the meeting. Would you be able to share kind of the general outcome of what the meeting was with the DOT gentleman?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Manthe, the outcome of the meeting is there can't be any commercial activity in the state right of way. They will move to confiscate anything that is within the right of way. As for the township right of way, that is completely up to the township, but we would not, basically anything that's happening outside of the property is not, it's prohibited, it's not allowed. All the business has to happen within the bounds of the property, has to meet the setbacks and the standards for the zoning district that it's in. And if there is a conditional use permit, it would have to meet those as well.
So when you were there was nothing in the highway right away, correct?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Krabanoff.
may I ask that he speaks to you?
Okay.
And so we don't get into this, and then I do have a question.
So when Matt was there with the person from the DOT, was there anything in the highway right away?
Mr. Chair and Mr. Manthe, I was not with anyone at the DOT on site. Our meeting was over the phone.
Okay. Didn't know that.
You have anything else, sir?
So like I said, the inventory that Levi has come in and go out changes very readily. Like I said, if you did take a picture today, there'd be probably 3 cars behind the building, hidden by the building, and whatever people were there working, parked in the parking area. I didn't know if I should have them move the stuff back until we had this meeting. So if that was an issue, that's on my side of things. I was never directly told, here's what you got to do. You got to move that stuff out today, type of thing. I thought we were waiting for this meeting to make the decision. So if that's a problem, I apologize for that. And we can look at remedying that however best necessary. The area in front.
If I
Commissioner Grabenow.
I'd like to ask him a question before he sits down and has to come back up. So, simple question. So the way you have your business, and you've been running it, whether it was with the pictures that we saw that I believe were on the 13th, or as you state they are today, is this how you see yourself running the business for the long term?
So I don't run the business. I rent the space out to Levi and Kristen.
So the blame's on him if it isn't correct, not you?
Well, I just want to know what is allowable and what, because we talked about at the planning commission, if there needs to be a fence there on the south side from Greg Krause, the next door neighbor to the south, that's something we'd look at entertaining or what have you. But I'm guessing that he intends to try and display these ATV, power sport type vehicles as best he can to gain attention from Highway 10. But the cars that he's working on would typically be parked in back and try to be lined up as best they can. And they roll through fairly quickly. They'll be there for probably a week or less, and then they're brought into the lot in Holly, and then they're sold.
As a landlord,
Okay.
put it that way then, you feel where the signage is, things out front, cars in the back from time to time is okay?
Well, I think it's going to be, in order to have that type of business there, that's going to be what's going to be happening there. And it's going to be hard to say that there's only supposed to be one vehicle, because he's trying to make a living selling cars, and without any cars, you can't make sales. His business model is that he buys cars that need a little bit of fixing up. He fixes them up. He's an ASC certified mechanic, and he fixes them up, brings them to the lot in town and sells them. He averages probably 5 to 8 cars a week on his sales. Some weeks he can't buy any. Some weeks he can buy 10 or 15. At this time, I think he bought 15 cars in one sale at New York Mills, and he's down to no inventory right now when I visited with him 2 days ago, because they're all sold. The cars that were in front of the building there were pre-sold cars that they hadn't picked up because they needed to come back and line up for a different ride. And so, we look at this building as a kind of a small business incubator, where he wouldn't be able to buy the building or the buildings outright if they were put up for sale, but he can pay the rent, and it works for both of us. So we have a person that lives in Clay County in Hitterall, Minnesota, working his dream job of owning a car dealership in Clay County, instead of taking on and going somewhere else to work for somebody else in Fargo or wherever.
Thank you.
Commissioner Moselle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Manthe, clarify for me again, do you have two businesses leasing that building?
No, it's just Car King Auto, but he does the ATVs
Okay.
out of there.
So can I just ask, I think it's probably common knowledge that you also own the commercial zoned stuff to the west, right?
Yep.
Similar to where you've been selling implements.
Yeah, just my
If you-
stuff, just my farm stuff.
Right, sorry, but if you were, would it be available to store, and I know it's a different lease, so I'm just hypothetically asking though, those vehicles on that other frontage space? I mean, is that an allowable storage on that piece? Even if he wasn't the owner, let's just say, is that allowable?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Mojo, that'd be something that I would have to research more. One thing I will say is that in the state of Minnesota, you do have to have a dealer's license to sell vehicles, and it's location specific. And we did check with the state of Minnesota, and there is not a dealer's license for this property.
But he doesn't
if he's-
retail them there, he only
Sorry.
fixes them there.
And that was my next question, I guess, is if there are no sales happening there, does that matter? But it was identified that some of them were already pre-sold.
That is something, Mr. Chair, I'd have to research more as well.
The signs, if you could bring that picture back, that are in question. Open for them to bring the vehicles into repair or to sell the equipment that's on display there.
I'm sorry,
The signs in question, open? Look, I assume it's open to sell the vehicles that the signs are located next to,
they just sell the ATVs there.
okay? So they are selling retail sales of
ATVs, yep, that's their, because if you look in the inside of the building, I don't know if you took any pictures of that, but they've got all nice lineup rows of these small vehicles. I think when I talked to him in August, he had sold 110 of these small ATVs and dirt bikes and go-karts and different things like that. And that was between the locations of in Hawley and out here, because I think I don't remember, I think July 1st was the start date of the rental on this building. Most of their other sales had, those 110 units was at the Hawley location. But the showroom out here is what attracted him, because it has a double door that they can bring the ATVs in on the west side. And so they have most of them in the inside storage. There's probably, I would guess, 30 units inside in that 1,500 square foot retail space. But to catch people's attention, he puts a few units out by the road to catch people's eye and get them to stop on the way to the lakes.
Commissioner
Has there
Gross.
been any complaints from the city of Hawley, or?
Mr. Chair, I did check with the city. There have not been any complaints from the city of Hawley, nor have there been any complaints made to the city of Hawley concerning the business that is within the city of Hawley. Just the note that there is a lot of on-street parking happening outside of that business. There has not been anything from the city of Hawley pertaining to this particular business, likely just because it's not within the city limits. So, with this business, with having the indoor display, primarily being an indoor display, selling the power sports, maybe having some limited outdoor display that's on the property, meets the setbacks, would probably not be any, I don't foresee any issue with that. I think the issue lies in the business is essentially spilling out onto the right-of-way.
Commissioner Campbell.
I do want to address, and I appreciate your comments about somebody wanting to have a successful business in Clay County. We get that. We try to accommodate that in every way we can. In this particular case, we have a business that has been in existence, and it had been operational in a completely different type of a format than this current business model. And when you go to make a significant change in the business model, you also have to take into consideration what does it do to the existing neighbors. And so we have to be realizing that. I mean, we don't want commercial at any cost if it's gonna make a difference to some of our neighboring deals. But so when I read some of these comments, and there's some concerns about the activities that go up and down the roads that that deal with the neighbors. And that is being done as a result in this change in business use. So, you know, I think we have to be taking some of that into consideration. That's why early on we talked about, I don't have a problem in the world with changing this to highway commercial. But still, there has to be that, you know, that way to satisfy the concerns of others so that it doesn't harm their way of living that they've grown accustomed to because of a new type of a business being brought in. And that goes to conditions. You know, and so I just wanted to bring that up, that you know, I'm not suggesting that I'm not in favor of a commercial business there.
Chairman Campbell, can I make a comment to that?
Certainly.
So there was one person that attended the meeting and expressed concern. Otherwise, they had never had a complaint, correct, Matt, prior to the meeting?
Address me, please.
Chairman, they'd never had a complaint prior to the meeting about this business here. That's the time when they opened up the discussion to the public. There was one family next door to the south, Greg, and I forget her first name, Krause, and otherwise there was nobody in the neighborhood that came and expressed any concern either in person or online for that. And his concern was, you know, just mostly regarding the cars in back, you know, and how much intensity there was on that. And like I mentioned, we had talked about alternatives for fencing or different things like that. And the one thing I do want to mention too is when Argyll's had the business, it was not as clean as it was when we had the Golden Treasures in there. There was a flower greenhouse attached to the front of the building, and there was a bunch of, when we took ownership of it, we had to clear out all the backyard because there was junk from one end to the other in the backyard there. And so that was a lot of cleanup on their and our part because they were collectors. And so you can see the greenhouse attached there, and that was the greenhouse was bought by the lady that bought the interior stuff, and it was moved off the building frontage. But prior to this, prior to 2016 when we bought it, that whole area where they pile snow to the south was all kinds of junk from the Argyll's. So it wasn't that it was perfect and pristine then when Greg Krause worked for the flower shop, and now it's got stuff there. It had a history of having stuff there, and Carol Argyll had the same type of fan signs in the front, right where Levi and Kristen's are located, because it was always to try and get people to come in and participate and use their business. It's just to draw attention to get them to come in and support the business, because they're moving fast at that point in time. The speed limit's up to 65, and they're trying to catch their attention and get them to slow down and stop. So, I mean, it wasn't that the whole neighborhood was upset with the business there. It was one neighbor to the
Okay,
south.
sir. We understand.
Okay.
One neighbor testified.
Yeah.
Matt, any other complaints other than that?
Mr. Chair, we've just had a couple comments between the Planning Commission hearing and this hearing, just from other neighbors, that they just consider it to be kind of an eyesore.
Okay.
It's the general comment that we've received.
Could these issues be addressed with conditional use permit if we approve the rezoning?
Mr. Chair, I think we could address the outdoor storage, specifically the outdoor storage of vehicles on the property. I would, and then also between now and any conditional use permit hearing, could work with Mr. MANTHE and Levi as well to address some of the issues with the right-of-way as well. And the township, of course, too.
So If this rezoning is approved, what would require him to go to the planning commission?
It would, for this, it would be for the outdoor, any outdoor storage. That would be accessory to the commercial use. So the primary use would be the auto sales or power sports sales. In our code, we have standards for outdoor storage of storage yards, materials, vehicles related to a commercial use. And that in the highway commercial zoning district does require a conditional use permit. So it'd be pretty limited to that.
So he'd be required to go before the...
Correct.
If Levi wants to keep them there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, if he doesn't want to keep them there, it's
If he can make some other arrangements.
a moot point. But then the issues of some of the neighbors goes away.
And of course, the right-of-way would be enforced.
Yeah, the right-of-way would have to be enforced, but it would be, ultimately, from the county perspective, it would be the business not operating on where it's permitted. And then you have the state right-of-way and the township right-of-way as well. So it'd be kind of working with those units of government.
Mr. Kravinoff?
We already I get most of this. The question I have, seems like there's a conflict. He mentioned auto sales. I understand the AV part of it, all good with that. On the auto sales, I think someone said they are not allowed there.
Auto sales would be allowed as a permitted
Thought they were-
use.
Oh,
They would have to have a dealer's license from the
Yeah.
state of Minnesota.
right.
Yes.
Which they don't have yet.
Currently,
now.
no.
Yeah,
They do at the location in Hawley, but not at this
yeah,
location.
but the ATV is fine.
I would need to do some research on that to determine consultation with the state on that, on the ATVs.
Is there any public? Is
Sorry.
there any members of the public that wishes to speak?
Yeah, anyone else here wish to address this? You would state your name and address, sir?
Steve Rodkey, Eglin Township Supervisor. We're here just to observe and to listen about the right-of-way. We, as a township, understand we have the right-of-way to the south of the flower shop off of Highway 10 South. We have nothing to the west, in our understanding, and we have never adopted anything that way. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Anybody else wish to address the commission on this issue? We have a motion to move out of public hearing.
Move to close.
Second.
Have a motion, a second. All in favor of the motion, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, we're out of public hearing. Commissioner Campbell.
Matt, I noticed in your presentation to us, you talked about a timeline for us to do this. Do you believe that it's in the best interest of the county to take between now and January 18th to review this, or what are your thoughts there?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Campbell, I think that if you were to choose one of these three options, that would be my recommendation. Then I can work with the Mr. Manthe and with the business owner. We can get a better understanding, I think, of what they would plan to do with the site. It would just allow us to bring, I think, before you a more detail about how to get from where it currently is to where they should be in terms of complying with the code. Otherwise, if you do choose to approve the rezoning, I think the conditional use permit for the outdoor storage, I think that would be acceptable as well. And I can also work with Mr. Manthe and the business owner on that and getting that taken care of, and the township as well.
Well, Well, I certainly don't like the third or the fourth bullet on there. I don't think that that should be an option for us. I think we need to try to come to some sort of a good conclusion to this. It's been commercial, so I think continuing that as commercial is appropriate, and then it's just a matter of working through what our current policy is in terms of when something is required of the conditions that'll go to the planning commission. And if there's, you know, unless there's any other interest, then I would suggest that we move forward with the zoning change.
And that does not preclude,
Oh, excuse me.
that does not preclude a conditional use permit that will address all these other issues.
It would address Mr. Chair, the outdoor storage issues.
And that's it, yeah.
And based on the information that we have to us, the outdoor storage and maybe this driving of these vehicles up and down the road are the two issues that were raised of concern.
That is correct.
So, I mean, it's hard for us to tell somebody they can't drive up and down a public roadway, you know, so it really then becomes what is the appropriate use on that, and I think that can be done through conditional use. So, Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the requested change from agricultural general to highway commercial for that property.
Second.
A motion and a second. Further discussion.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you. I'd like to talk maybe a little bit about the outdoor component that's a potential next step. And you know, Scott, if I have 4 children and a husband that loves ATVs, and so if you've ever driven with anyone who likes those types of things, it doesn't matter if they're set an additional 15 feet back or not, they seem to always notice them. And, you know, I think that this parcel is unique, as you said. It does fit a commercial cutout, if you will, for business in Clay County. I do have concerns with the storage component of the auto pieces in the back. And the reason is, whether they're screened from the road or not, they're still not quite screened from the residences. And even in rural Clay County, we've permitted businesses similar to by the racetrack, the drag strip north of Sabin. We would not allow that amount of cars to be parked outside, even at that storage site. So, you know, I would suggest lightly maybe mitigating that a little bit. I know it's delicate when you have folks that are renting from you to change how many vehicles they can maybe have outside, but I think that is a little excessive, and it will be a problem once it comes to the Planning Commission if this passes. I will say that. I really appreciate that you are looking at different areas throughout the entire county as places to be commercial. I'll support this going to commercial, because if we didn't, rather, I would suggest we assess your property differently. You know, right, because I do think that's maybe an unfair component, but I will say there is a give and take, and I have problems with the vehicles parked back there, and I would probably suggest moving those ATVs back a little bit from the road, just.
Anything else? Okay.
And two, I might follow up. I also have no interest in regulating how folks test drive vehicles or others on public roadways. I think that's a dangerous slope, but I would suggest that we have the correct licensure in place for the facility too.
You were thinking like a cop, because that was my, after all the years of, don't get upset about that, they're doing something legal. Licensure is always the issue. And so we're not going to have a deputy come out and sit on the road and watch, but I don't think the sheriff would, but it is an issue, particularly when you look at liability. Okay, any additional? If not, we have motion and second on the floor, and we'll need a roll call vote on this.
Commissioner Mojo,
Yes.
Commissioner Campbell,
Yes.
Commissioner Ebinger?
Yes.
Commissioner Gross?
Yes.
Commissioner Krabanoff?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Matt. And unless we have some additional business, we've gotten through all our committee reports and everybody else. So, any additional business? Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you. I might just state, there is a public meeting that MetroCog is having in regards to the extension of the 15th Avenue paving suggestion to 336. That's this evening at the Dilworth Elementary School from 5:30 to 7:30. There's a presentation at 6.
Is that on the 15th or the 8th Avenue?
15th.
That is the 15th.
Okay. I thought there was.
There's one tonight and then I believe Thursday, but you can go to the MetroCog website to see.
Anybody have anything else? All right, we're adjourned.